Before the establishment of Boston Township and its later transformation into what's now known as HellTown, the region was originally inhabited by Native American tribes. The most prominent among these were the Lenape, also known as the Delaware, and the Shawnee people. The Lenape were originally from the Delaware River area in present-day New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York, but were gradually pushed westward by European settlers. By the 1700s, many Lenape had settled in the Ohio region, including the area that would later become Boston Township. The Shawnee, another prominent tribe in Ohio, also lived in the region during this time. During the 18th century, the pressure on Native American lands increased dramatically as more European settlers moved westward. The Ohio River Valley, in particular, became a hotbed of conflict between Native Americans and settlers, especially as the British and French both sought to control the area during the French and Indian War. Following the war, the Treaty of Paris and later treaties, such as the Treaty of Fort Stanwix, further ceded Native American lands to the British, pushing the indigenous people out of their ancestral lands. The Northwest Indian War was another significant conflict, where Native American tribes, including the Lenape and Shawnee, fought against the United States to retain their lands in the Ohio region. After the U.S. victory in this war, the Treaty of Greenville enforced the Native American tribes to cede much of their land in Ohio, including the area around Boston Township. Many Native Americans were forced to move further west, either to reservations or other unsettled lands, as part of the larger pattern of displacement that continued into the 19th century. The forced removal and cession of lands had a devastating impact on the Native American communities in the region. They lost not only their homes and ancestral lands, but also access to resources that were vital to their way of life. The displacement led to a loss of cultural identity for many, as they were separated from their traditional lands and practices. The history of HellTown, Ohio, therefore, is layered with the earlier tragedy of Native American displacement, long before the more recent events of the 1970s. This deeper history adds another dimension to the region's legacy of forced removal and loss. Let's get ready to explore. Welcome to Screamville. HellTown, Ohio is the nickname given to the area formerly known as Boston Township, located in Summit County. The events of the 1970s that led to the creation of the HellTown legend. Boston Township was established in the early 19th century, growing as a small, rural community. It was a peaceful place, with a close-knit population primarily involved in farming and small businesses. By the mid-20th century, the area was still relatively quiet, though it had experienced some economic decline. The paper mill in Boston Township was established in the early 19th century, around the 1820s or 1830s. It was one of the first industrial operations in the area and became a cornerstone of the local economy. The mill produced paper products that were distributed regionally, and it provided employment for many of the town's residents. The presence of the Ohio and Erie Canal, which passed through Boston Township, made it easier to transport goods, including the paper produced at the mill. This access to transportation helped the mill thrive and contributed to the growth of the surrounding community. The paper mill was a major employer in the area, and its success helped attract more settlers to Boston Township. The town grew around the mill and other industrial operations, leading to the establishment of homes, schools, and businesses. The mill's operation also supported other local industries, such as logging and agriculture, as these provided the raw materials needed for paper production. As with many small industrial towns, Boston Township faced challenges as the 19th century progressed. Changes in the economy, advances in technology, and competition from larger mills in other regions led to the decline of the paper mill. By the late 19th or early 20th century, the mill had either closed or drastically reduced its operations. The closure of the paper mill was a significant blow to the local economy, leading to a gradual decline in population and prosperity in Boston Township. This decline set the stage for the events of the 1970s. In the 1970s, the U.S. government, under President Gerald Ford, made the decision to acquire large tracts of land across the country to create national parks. Boston Township was selected as part of this initiative. The government declared the area eminent domain, meaning they could forcibly purchase the land from its residents. The stated purpose was to establish what is now the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. Residents were given notices to vacate their homes, leading to widespread discontent and confusion. Many longtime residents were forced to leave their homes, often with little compensation or assistance. The government's abrupt and poorly managed relocation effort left many houses abandoned, and some were even demolished, giving the area a ghost town appearance. One of the most persistent legends about HellTown is that the military was called in to forcibly remove residents and that they burned down houses to ensure the land was cleared. However, this is more myth than fact. In reality, there is no documented evidence that the U.S. Army was involved in the removal of residents or that they burned down houses. The abandoned houses were often left to decay over time, contributing to the ghostly appearance of the area. Some buildings were eventually demolished by the government, but the dramatic scenes of military intervention and widespread arson are part of the folklore rather than historical fact. The removal process left many homes abandoned, and the town quickly took on an eerie, deserted atmosphere. These empty homes and the rumors surrounding the government's actions fueled the myths of HellTown. Over the years, as the structures deteriorated and nature began to reclaim the land, the stories grew more elaborate, feeding into the legend of HellTown as a haunted and cursed place. The resistance of the residents remains a poignant part of the HellTown story. While they were ultimately unsuccessful in preventing the government from taking their land, their struggle is remembered as a symbol of the loss of community and the powerlessness that individuals can feel when faced with government mandates. The legends of HellTown continue to captivate imaginations, but they also serve as a reminder of the real human cost of such large-scale government actions. According to the legend, William Birdsell was not just a local landowner, but also served as the superintendent of the area during the time when the government was acquiring land in Boston Township for the creation of what would become Cuyahoga Valley National Park. As superintendent, Birdsell would have been responsible for overseeing the process of land acquisition, dealing with the residents, and ensuring that the government's plans were executed smoothly. The legend suggests that Birdsell played a pivotal role in deceiving the residents of Boston Township. It is said that he was involved in convincing the locals that their homes would be safe and that the government had no intention of forcing them to leave. This reassurance led many residents to believe that they could remain in their homes, despite the growing evidence that the government was planning to clear the area. As the story goes, Birdsell's position of authority and his apparent concern for the community made his reassurances believable. However, behind the scenes, he was allegedly working with the government to ensure that the land would be cleared for the park, regardless of the promises made to the residents. The betrayal felt by the community was profound. When the truth came out that the government was indeed planning to remove the residents, many felt that Birdsell had knowingly tricked them, using his position of trust to make the transition easier for the government but harder on the people who lived there. The sense of betrayal added to the anger and resentment toward the government, fueling the legends of HellTown as a place of broken promises and deceit. The story of William Birdsell as a deceptive superintendent play into the broader narrative of HellTown as a place where ordinary people were mistreated and lied to by those in power. Whether or not Birdsell actually played this role is difficult to confirm, as much of the HellTown story is shrouded in myth and folklore. However, the tale of his involvement adds another layer of intrigue to the area's history, painting a picture of a community that was misled and ultimately forced out by forces beyond their control. William Birdsell's role as the superintendent who tricked the people is a central part of the town's legend. This tale contributes to the sense of injustice and mystery that continues to surround the area, making it a focal point for stories of deception, haunting, and tragedy. The legend surrounding William Birdsell often portrays him as a man with a dark and mysterious past. Some versions of the story claim that he was involved in secretive or nefarious activities, possibly related to the occult or other supernatural practices. These tales are likely part of the broader folklore that has developed around HellTown, where many ordinary aspects of history have been exaggerated or distorted to fit the town's haunted image. One of the most common elements of Birdsell's story is that his land, or a specific property associated with him, was cursed or haunted. The supposed curse is sometimes linked to the Native American burial grounds or the displacement of Native Americans from the area, suggesting that Birdsell's land was plagued by spiritual unrest as a result. In some versions of the story, Birdsell's house is said to have been a focal point for strange occurrences and paranormal activity. Tales of ghostly apparitions, strange noises, and other unexplained phenomena are often linked to the property. Over time, these stories contributed to the growing legend of HellTown as a place of supernatural danger. The true history of William Birdsell, if he was indeed a historical figure, is difficult to separate from the legends. It is possible that he was simply a local landowner whose name became associated with the folklore of HellTown over time. The stories about him may have been embellished or entirely fabricated as part of the region's rich tradition of storytelling. There is little documented evidence to support the more dramatic claims about Birdsell's life or his involvement in occult practices. Like many elements of the HellTown legend, his story likely grew out of a combination of real historical events, local superstitions, and the imaginative retellings of those seeking to explain the strange and eerie atmosphere of the area. William Birdsell is a character who has become part of the mythos of HellTown, Ohio, though the line between fact and fiction in his story is blurred. The tales associated with him contribute to the mysterious and haunted reputation of HellTown. His story is one of many that have helped to shape the identity of this infamous area, making it a place of intrigue for those interested in the supernatural and the unexplained. The government acquired hundreds of homes with plans to transform the area into a national park, but the project soon lagged behind schedule. As the homes remained abandoned and vacant for years, urban legends began to flourish. Some people claimed the area was haunted and speculated that the government had bought the land to conceal some sinister activities. These rumors spread, eventually leading to the area being dubbed HellTown. According to local legend, a chemical spill occurred in the area following the evacuation, leading to the creation of mutated creatures. The most popular version of the story claims that a government truck or train carrying toxic chemicals crashed in the area, spilling hazardous materials into the environment. The chemicals supposedly seeped into the ground, contaminating the water supply and the surrounding wildlife. Over time, the animals and even some of the remaining humans who were exposed to the toxins began to mutate. The legend describes these creatures as grotesque, with exaggerated features and deformities. Some versions of the story mention large, menacing beings with glowing eyes, malformed limbs, and twisted bodies that lurk in the woods. Others talk about strange hybrid animals, a mix of different species, that were the result of the chemicals altering their DNA. These creatures are said to be highly aggressive, attacking anyone who dares to enter their territory. One specific creature tied to this legend is the peninsula python, a giant snake rumored to have been mutated by the chemicals. According to the legend, the snake grew to enormous sizes, slithering through the abandoned buildings and wooded areas of HellTown. Sightings of the python were reported by those who ventured too close, adding to the area's eerie reputation. The residents of HellTown suffered from genetic mutations that affected both their bodies and minds. These mutations caused physical deformities and abnormal growths, while also leading to cognitive impairments, behavioral disorders, and developmental delays. The impact of these mutations was profound and debilitating. Everyday tasks became a struggle, and living a normal life was nearly impossible. Their cognitive functions, emotional stability, and social interactions were all severely disrupted. This is where things take a dark turn. Evidence has surfaced suggesting the government was involved in a cover-up of the HellTown incident. Whistleblowers and former officials have come forward, revealing that the government was fully aware of the genetic mutations caused by chemicals from the Western Reserve Chemical Company. Instead of taking swift action to protect the residents, they chose to hide the information and downplay the severity of the situation. The government wanted to protect the chemical industry, particularly the Western Reserve Chemical Company, which was a major economic player in the region, providing jobs and financial stability. Exposing the truth about the mutations and the company's role in causing them would have led to legal trouble, financial losses, and reputational damage. But that's not all. The government also sought to prevent public panic and maintain social order. They feared that widespread knowledge of the genetic mutations and chemical exposure would lead to fear, protests, and lawsuits. By keeping the truth under wraps, they aimed to avoid public unrest and retain control. The horrors of HellTown extended beyond genetic mutations. The pollution caused by the Western Reserve Chemical Company had devastating environmental consequences. Toxic chemicals contaminated the air, water, and soil, disrupting and degrading the surrounding ecosystem. Biodiversity plummeted, ecosystems were thrown out of balance, and some species even vanished. The contamination didn't stop there. Water sources became polluted, posing serious risks to both humans and animals. Groundwater was rendered unsafe for drinking or agricultural use, and aquatic life suffered from fish kills and disrupted habitats. The long-term health risks were equally alarming. Exposure to these toxic chemicals increased the likelihood of respiratory problems, neurological disorders, reproductive issues, and even cancer. The genetic mutations seen in affected individuals only compounded the long-term health risks, threatening not just them but future generations as well. One of the legends suggests that HellTown was once the hunting ground of a deranged serial killer who preyed on unsuspecting travelers or locals. According to the myth, this killer lived in the abandoned buildings of HellTown, using the desolate surroundings to his advantage. Victims would supposedly be lured into the town or captured while passing through, only to meet a grisly end. Some versions of the story tie this killer to the broader narrative of government conspiracies and secret experiments that supposedly took place in HellTown. The killer is sometimes described as a product of these experiments, a government-created monster who turned against his creators and then continued his killing spree in the secluded woods of HellTown. His name was Tony Costa. In the winter of 1969, the bodies of 4 young women were discovered in a cemetery near the tip of Cape Cod. These victims had been shot, stabbed, dismembered, and mutilated. Costa, a local carpenter and drug dealer, was found to be responsible for these horrific crimes. Costa's story is detailed in the book HellTown, The Untold Story of a Serial Killer on Cape Cod by Casey Sherman. This true crime narrative explores Costa's gruesome acts and the cultural backdrop of the time, including the involvement of famous writers like Kurt Vonnegut and Norman Mailer, who were drawn to the case. The Murders on the Bus is another eerie tale associated with the legends of the town. It involves an old, abandoned school bus that can supposedly be found deep within the woods. According to the story, the bus was filled with a group of children who were either on a school trip or simply passing through the area. The bus broke down in HellTown, leaving the children stranded. As the legend goes, a deranged serial killer, or possibly a group of cultists, found and brutally murdered everyone on board. The bus was left in the woods, with the bodies of the children inside, their spirits forever haunting the vehicle and the surrounding area. In some versions, the murders are attributed to a satanic cult known to operate in the area. The cultists are said to have used the bus for ritual sacrifices, and the ghostly images of the children are sometimes reported to be seen sitting inside the bus. People who venture near the bus claim to hear the eerie sounds of children crying or screaming. Some even report seeing ghostly figures of the children in the windows of the bus. Another variation of the story includes the bus driver being complicit in the murders, having been driven mad by the isolation and eerie atmosphere of HellTown. The legend of the Satanic Church in the town is one of the most infamous and chilling tales associated with this abandoned area. The church was simply abandoned as part of the government's effort to repurpose the land. The Satanic Church, often referred to as the Church of the Damned, adds a dark and mysterious element to the lore. According to the legend, there was a church that was supposedly the gathering place for a satanic cult. The building, described as a small, old, and weathered structure, is said to have been located in a remote part of the town surrounded by dense woods. The church was reportedly used for dark rituals, including sacrifices and other satanic practices. This church, known as the Mother of Sorrows, is a Presbyterian church that has been the subject of many rumors. The church's Gothic revival architecture features upside-down crosses, which fueled speculation that it was a site for satanic worship. However, these crosses are actually a common design element in Gothic architecture and not indicative of any sinister activities. The most sinister part of the legend involves an old man who is said to have lived in the basement of the church. This man is often described as the leader of the cult, a figure who orchestrated the rituals and sacrifices that took place within the church's walls. In some versions of the story, the old man is portrayed as a malevolent spirit or demon who took on human form to lead the cult. The tale of the old man living in the basement is particularly chilling. Visitors to HellTown who claim to have encountered the church often describe a feeling of intense dread when approaching the building. Some report seeing strange symbols etched into the walls, hearing unexplainable noises, or even encountering the old man himself. In the legend, the old man is sometimes depicted as a ghostly figure who can still be seen wandering the grounds of the church. Those who venture too close to the building or attempt to enter it are said to be confronted by the old man, who either appears as a warning or as a harbinger of something far worse. Another popular legend. There is an old weathered bench located somewhere in the woods or near the deserted streets of HellTown. The bench itself appears ordinary, but those who approach it are said to encounter a mysterious man sitting there, seemingly out of place in the desolate surroundings. The man is often described as being dressed in old-fashioned or tattered clothing with a somber expression on his face. He sits quietly, staring straight ahead, and does not speak or acknowledge anyone who passes by. Some versions of the story claim that if you sit on the bench next to him, you might feel a sudden chill or a sense of overwhelming dread. There are several variations of the man on the bench legend. In some versions of the tale, the man is a ghost who died tragically in HellTown, possibly during the government's forced evacuation of the area. His spirit is said to be trapped there, eternally waiting for something or someone, though no one knows what. Another variation suggests that the man on the bench is a harbinger of doom. Those who see him are warned not to approach him, as doing so might lead to misfortune or even death. In some stories, he disappears if you get too close, leaving behind only an empty bench. Some versions depict the man as a lonely, sorrowful figure who is not dangerous but is instead a symbol of the loss and abandonment that the former residents experienced. He might represent the lingering memories of those who once lived in the town and were forced to leave. A lighter story of the town is that when visitors to HellTown walk through certain parts of the town, particularly near the dense woods or along the overgrown paths, they sometimes encounter a strange and unsettling phenomenon. The bushes around them begin to rustle and move as if being blown by a strong wind. However, the unsettling part of the legend is that there is no apparent wind or breeze that could be causing the movement. People who have experienced this phenomenon describe it as if the bushes are being pushed or manipulated by an unseen force. The movement is often described as erratic or unnatural, with the bushes swaying or shaking in a way that doesn't align with normal wind patterns. In some versions of the story, the rustling is accompanied by whispers or low murmurs, adding to the sense of unease. Some believe that the rustling bushes are the result of spirits or ghosts that still linger in HellTown. These spirits, perhaps the restless souls of former residents or victims of tragic events, are said to be moving through the area, causing the bushes to stir as they pass by. In other versions of the tale, the moving bushes are seen as a warning. The unseen force that causes them to move is believed to be trying to communicate with visitors, perhaps to deter them from venturing further into the town or to warn them of some impending danger. While the legend takes on a supernatural tone, some suggest that the phenomenon could be explained by natural causes, such as small animals moving through the underbrush or localized gusts of wind that are difficult to perceive. However, the unsettling nature of the experience, especially in the already eerie environment of HellTown, gives it a much more mysterious and ghostly interpretation. The Crybaby Bridge in HellTown is said to be located in or near the abandoned town, often described as an old rickety bridge crossing over a small creek or river. According to the legend, if you visit the bridge at night, you might hear the faint, haunting cries of a baby echoing through the darkness. One common version of the legend suggests that a young mother accidentally dropped her baby off the bridge into the water below, either due to a sudden slip or some other tragic mishap. In her grief, the mother either jumped in after the baby or was left devastated by the loss. The baby's spirit is said to haunt the bridge, crying out for its mother. Another, more sinister version of the story involves a mother who, in a moment of despair or mental instability, deliberately threw her baby off the bridge. Unable to live with the guilt, the mother is said to have taken her own life soon after. The cries heard at the bridge are believed to be the baby's ghost, forever calling out for its mother. Some versions of the legend introduce a supernatural element, suggesting that the bridge is cursed. Those who visit the bridge might not only hear the baby's cries, but could also feel a sudden chill, see strange apparitions, or even experience their car stalling if they try to cross it. Many thrill seekers and paranormal enthusiasts have visited the supposed Crybaby Bridge in HellTown, hoping to experience the eerie phenomenon for themselves. Reports vary, with some claiming to have heard the unmistakable sound of a baby crying, while others describe feeling an overwhelming sense of sadness or dread when standing on the bridge. Some visitors have also reported other strange occurrences, such as hearing footsteps behind them when no one is there, seeing ghostly figures near the bridge, or feeling an unexplained cold breeze even on a warm night. The legend continues to draw curious visitors to the area, many of whom are eager to test the tale for themselves, even if just for the thrill of a ghostly encounter. Whether or not the cries are real, the story of Crybaby Bridge remains a haunting and integral part of HellTown's dark folklore. The legend of the Witch of HellTown is one of the many dark and mysterious tales that have contributed to the eerie reputation of the town. This legend, like others from the area, is steeped in folklore, with elements of supernatural fear, local history, and imaginative storytelling. According to the legend, the witch was a woman who lived in the area long before the government forced residents to leave. The story varies depending on the source, but it generally describes the witch as a reclusive and mysterious figure who lived on the outskirts of town, possibly deep in the woods. She was said to have practiced dark magic, and the locals feared her, attributing unexplained events and misfortunes to her influence. The witch is often described as an old, haggard woman with a sinister appearance, embodying the traditional image of a witch. She may have been seen wearing dark robes, with a hunched posture and piercing eyes that seemed to see right through anyone who encountered her. The witch's home is said to have been a small, decrepit cabin or shack, hidden away from the main parts of town. This home was rumored to be filled with strange artifacts, potions, and other signs of her dark craft. Some versions of the story claim that the cabin was protected by spells or curses, causing anyone who approached it to feel a sense of dread or to encounter strange phenomena. The witch was believed to have cursed the town and its inhabitants. People who crossed her or ventured too close to her home might have found themselves stricken with bad luck, illness, or worse. She was also said to have the ability to control the weather, summon spirits, or even cause death through her powerful spells. A particularly chilling aspect of the legend involves a tree near her home, sometimes referred to as the hanging tree. According to the story, this tree was used for dark rituals, including the hanging of those who were said to be cursed or those who dared to confront the witch. Some say that the spirits of these victims still haunt the area around the tree. In some versions of the legend, the townspeople eventually decided to rid themselves of the witch once and for all. They captured her and in a violent confrontation either hanged or burned her as punishment for her supposed crimes. However, before her death, the witch is said to have cursed the entire town, ensuring that her spirit would linger there, continuing to haunt HellTown long after she was gone. The Witch of HellTown is a story that has played a significant role in shaping the town's spooky reputation. The fear of witches and the supernatural has deep roots in American history, dating back to events like the Salem witch trials. In the case of HellTown, the story of the witch likely evolved as a way to explain the eerie and unsettling atmosphere of the abandoned town history and isolation, makes it a perfect setting for such a tale. Much of what is said about HellTown is based on hearsay and local legend. Skeptics point to the lack of verifiable evidence and inconsistencies in eyewitness accounts. Whether true or not, HellTown has captured the imaginations of many, solidifying its place in folklore. Despite the risks, HellTown continues to attract visitors drawn to its eerie beauty and chilling legends. For some, it's a challenge to prove their skepticism or capture evidence of the paranormal. HellTown beckons us to confront the darkness at the edge of our perception. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe as it helps the channel grow. Thanks for watching.